Hi guys, is this working? Is this thing on? No. No. What have I got to do? It's on, the light's on. Oh, take it off mute, that didn't work. Right, hi everybody. Thanks for inviting me to come down here, Jack. It's been a good day. I would like to talk to you guys about a little project that, just kind of a personal thing, but the thing about personal projects is you can often take really interesting lessons from them. So, my talk is called 226 lessons in the creative process. You think, oh God, are we really going to listen to 226 things? No, not really. I've divided this talk into three parts: exploring creativity, learning from creativity, and applying creativity. And so take from it what you will. But part one is this idea of exploring the creative process. We've been talking a little bit about creativity today. And I just want to tell you, that photo there, which is a little bit washed out by the lights, but that photo there is a green lime spider. And that was taken down on the other side of Port Phillip Bay. I forget what the name of the beach is. Where did Harold Holt get taken down there somewhere? Yeah, Portsea, thank you. So I was down there a couple of years ago. It was, oh that's better. It was January the 1st, about 3 years ago, when I was with a mate of mine, John Pearce, who some of you may know, fellow Victorian. And I took this photo as we had our coffee, and John said, why don't you do one of those 365-day photo projects where you take a photo every day for a year? Has anyone ever done one of those? Yeah, you should. It's a good exercise. So I took this photo and I thought, well, it's January the 1st today, and I've just taken a photo. Let's see how long I can keep this up for. And surprise, surprise, I actually managed to take one photo every day for a year, which, if you know anything about my self-discipline, is a huge surprise. So, one photo every day for a year. And the thing about when you force yourself to have a little bit of self-discipline to do something every single day, a couple of things happen. One is you surprise yourself if you actually do it. And the second thing is you start to spot opportunities that you never would have spotted otherwise. So over the next 365 days, I took 365 photos, just with my phone. And it's interesting how you figure out how to streamline the process. So if I had to actually blog these photos every single day and go to a blog and log in and do all that sort of stuff, I never would have done it. It was just simply a fact that John helped me figure out that, hey, there's an app where you can just like email it to this address and it will automatically post it to Blogger for you. And so you can streamline some things with some really interesting technology tools. And if you can make something easy enough, then you'll probably stick with it. Anyone ever been on a diet? Right? So if you make it easy, you might stick to it. So over the next 365 days, I took 365 photos, some of which were just junk. Oh my God, it's 5 minutes to midnight, I haven't taken a photo yet. Oh, come here, the cat, right? And other days, there were some photos there that I was actually very proud of. They were quite artistic, and I learned a lot about photography, I learned a lot about composition, I learned a lot about thinking creatively by forcing myself to do this daily photograph thing. So I thought it was interesting. And I like this idea about creativity not being this thing you trot out once in a blue moon and say, all right kids, it's time to be creative now. But this idea that creativity is a way of thinking about things. It's just the way you are, it's the way you act, it's the way you think. It's this daily, deliberate thing where creativity just becomes an ingrained part of what you do and not simply just this thing that you occasionally think about being. Does that make sense? Yep. So I like this idea. Now when January the 1st this year came around, and I thought I should do another one of those daily project things. That was fun. What can I do? I've done the photo thing, what else could I do? So I asked a few people on Twitter and I've had a few suggestions, and I eventually thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a daily creative thing. What if I made something every day for a year? Something, anything. Could be a photo, could be a story, could be a poem, could be a piece of music, could be a film, could be something around the house. My concept of creativity, I know Sir Ken Robinson says creativity is, what did he say? Adding value, something like that. Creativity is something that adds value. Yeah. Mine was much simpler than that. Creativity for me was bringing something into existence today that didn't exist yesterday. It was as simple as that. And so I thought, what if I made something every day for a year? And so I thought, oh, I'm going to try and do this. So I actually set up a blog. Because as soon as you set up a blog, you sort of commit yourself to the process. And so there it is at www.mydailycreate.com. You're welcome to go and have a look at it. And right now, today is day 226. And I'm pleased to say I have not missed a day yet. Actually, I tell a lie. Yesterday was day 226, so today's not finished yet, so I have an excuse. Right? So 226 continuous days of making something every day. And so far I'm pretty pleased. 100 days to go. So, what I've found as I was making something every day is a couple of things. A lot of the things I was making are digital. And that maybe is partly because that's just kind of, I'm a digital kind of person, I think. You know, if I want to make something, I'd probably turn to a computer before I turn to something, not a computer. And the other thing I discovered about doing something every day for a year, that if you force yourself to do it, then you force yourself to find things that you didn't expect or you didn't know existed. And so I started with the obvious, the low-hanging fruit of creativity. I go to the App Store and on my iPad and see if there's any painting and drawing apps, because that's creative, right? So, you know, there's this nice little app here called Paper Camera, and you can take a photo and you can then sort of turn it into a watercolour and do all that sort of thing. This one here is a thing called Play Art, which gives you the famous works of Van Gogh and Picasso and all these other famous artists and lets you sort of remix them and drag them around and turn them into your own artworks. So that's the kind of the low-hanging fruit. Start with some apps that are kind of built for creativity. There's some more there. I really like this one. This is called Waterlog. And again, it lets you take a photograph and turn the photograph into an oil, like a watercolour painting. This was my dog in Adobe Photoshop that I just took a photo of my dog and then just coloured it in and drew over the top of it. Right, these were all done in the first few days, really, where I was just sort of figuring out what I would do for a daily create. Then you discover some interesting apps. So this was an app called Robots, and this turned out to be great for kindergarten. I did this little thing on robots, and then next day I went to school and the kindergarten teachers were saying, we're doing this thing about robots. Got any ideas? I'm like, actually I do. And so this was done with an iOS app called Robots. This was done with an Android app called Androidify. Because the other thing about it is I thought I don't want to just do the same thing every day, so sometimes I try and use iOS, sometimes I try and use Android, sometimes the web, sometimes desktop tools, sometimes mobile tools. I'm trying to do all sorts of different things and mix it up a little bit. Interestingly, I find that of the 266 things so far, probably 80% of them have been done on the iPad, which I think is really interesting, because you know when people say, oh, the iPad, that's just a consumption device. That's so wrong. iPads are amazing creativity tools. They're not the only creativity tools, but you can do some pretty cool things with them. So, you know, there's apps to make superheroes, and there's apps to make cartoons, and there's apps to make patterns and reflections and explore symmetry. And then you start to get into some sort of, you know, wacky thinking about stuff. So, I mean, this is just an app called, oh, I forget the name of that one. Forget the name now. It's like a patterning app, and you simply drag your finger around and it creates axes of symmetry. I've seen teachers use this to get the kids to make patterns which they then print out and then they fold up into origami things. And they're using it to create their own sort of paper, which is a nice idea. These circular patterns like kaleidoscopes. I didn't know, but when you have a pattern that goes in a circle, it's called a mandala. And I just thought it was funny to stick Nelson Mandela inside a mandala. It's before he died, by the way. So I just thought that was funny. And like, I have this really strange sense of humour, and I really like visual puns. And so, you know, when I did this mandala for Mandela thing, I thought, oh, I kind of like the whole visual pun idea. And then I got into sort of silly ideas, like I was wandering in the supermarket one day and I saw this jar of whole black olives. And I grabbed it, took a photo with my camera and took it home and then photoshopped it into the universe. So it was a black hole olives in a black hole. Camping one morning down the south coast, and it was a really cold morning. I walked past the camp kitchen and there was this tiny little chili, and I thought, I'm feeling a little chilly this morning. It's hard to see, but there's a face drawn on that jar. It's a jar of chicken broth, and it had been in our fridge for so long, and my wife said, I think that chicken broth's gone bad. And I thought, I wonder what chicken broth gone bad would look like. And that's what I think it would look like. I have a couple of bass guitars at home, and one day my son came over and said, can I borrow the bass guitar? And so I gave him my second bass guitar, and as he was taking it, I said, hold this, I know I'm not going to get it back. And so this was like stealing second bass. So again, I said, you know, Alex, hold the bass. I took a photo of him with my phone, dropped it into Photoshop, stripped it out, did some things in Photoshop, just messed around with it. I was sitting there watching television, just fiddling in Photoshop, and that's what I ended up with. So this is not brain surgery, right? This is just messing about with digital tools and having fun and seeing what comes out the other end. This one is an app called Type Drawing, and Type Drawing is interesting because you can actually put a phrase or a piece of text, a sentence, and draw that text with your finger. And so I found this piece of text that described how I was reading a book about ants, and it said when ants walk in a big circle, sometimes they double back on themselves, pick up their own scent, and then walk in circles until they die. It's called an ant mill. And so I found the sentence from Wikipedia that talked about ant mills. And then if you read this, this is all about circling to your death, right? Until you die. And just put the ant in the middle. Again, just a silly little idea that what if I explored that? What if I did something with it? And you know the problem with most creativity is we all have these little wacky ideas. Who's ever had a little wacky idea flow through their head, right? And then not done anything about it, right? And that's the secret. When you have these ideas, do something about it. And doing a daily create, what it's really done is it's forced me to not just let these things be fleeting glimpses, but to actually then do something about it and actually make it into something. It's been enlightening. Sometimes the things you create can be actually useful. My son was travelling in Europe for about 7 months, and he was posting all these photos to Instagram. So as a coming home gift for him, I actually raided his Instagram account, dropped all these photos into Photoshop and tidied them up a bit, and then dropped them into InDesign and made these lovely grids, and then took it down the framing shop and got them framed. So when he came home, he had these beautiful framed images of his trip. Sometimes creativity can actually make nice things in the physical world. This is an iPad and Chromebook holder in our Year 3 and 4 classrooms, because we had a problem that we had, well, what's the problem? Our kids had some Chromebooks and some iPads in each of their classrooms, but you know how expensive those trolleys are? Like, they're ridiculously expensive. That cardboard box designed to hold papers costs $15. And these paper clips on the side there for doing the cable runs cost next to nothing. So, like, sometimes a creative solution actually solves a real problem. That's my backyard at home. If you're thinking it could use a garden, you're right. Like, one day we should put a garden in the backyard and never got around to it. And one day I went out with the iPad and snapped the garden like that photo, and then took it into Photoshop on the iPad and actually just sketched out a garden. I went, that's what it could look like. And you know what? Here's the thing with creativity stuff is as soon as you plant the seed in the head, the next day I'm out there with a shovel. So like it had been 3 years and nothing, and all of a sudden I actually do something, an idea, and next thing I'm digging a hole, and next thing I've got a fence, and next thing I've got a garden, right? So sometimes creativity is the trigger to bring something into the real world. This is a lovely app called Foldify, and Foldify lets you create 3D objects, and it breaks it into the net of that object, and you can decorate it with, you can either draw on it, paint on it, but you can take photos and drop your photos onto it. And again, just a silly idea. Oh, it's midnight, I nearly need to do my create for the day, go into the App Store, oh, this looks interesting, find this thing called Foldify and make this. But here's the fascinating thing, like I posted this on the blog, and like a couple of days later this guy writes to me and he says, I've got a student with Asperger's and he's not very good at recognising facial cues. So we've taken your dice idea, turned it into real dice that roll with faces on them, and we play games in the classroom where you roll the dice and this kid has to kind of respond correctly to the face. Oh, I never thought of that. What a great idea. Has anyone ever heard of knolling? K-N-O-L-L-I-N-G? No, neither had I. That's about the response I expected from an audience of this size. So this is called knolling. You go to your kitchen drawer and you raid it and you lay it all out on the table and take a photograph on it. Strangest thing I've ever heard of. But I thought I need a daily create for today, so I'll do it. Did you know I did this? I get a message on Facebook from someone I went to art school with who I haven't heard from for nearly 20 years, and she says, oh my God, you're into knolling! And I'm like, I didn't even know knolling was a thing! So I went and told her, and now she's got the kids actually designing the characters from the novel so they can picture what they look like. So I just, playing around with it, because I like to know how it works, just made 9 little faces. From those 9 little faces, I thought, what if you took that a step further? So I went and made some other faces, and then used another app called Warhol, I think something Warhol, Warhol Pop Art or something, and actually just turned them into little Andy Warhol screen prints. Okay, I think it looks quite nice. What do you learn from this? Because if it's just messing around with media, that's a lot of fun, it's great, but like, I'm looking for what's the deeper lesson, what's below that? What have I learned from doing daily creates? And more importantly, what can I learn as a teacher to go and apply back in a classroom? So here's a couple of little lessons that I took from it. First thing is that create is a verb. Okay, this is about doing stuff. It's not about thinking, and I've already mentioned that. It's not about having an idea and letting it go. It's about doing stuff. Okay? If you don't act on your impulse of creativity, if it just remains a noun, then it's not going to actually ever come into existence. So create is a verb. Second thing is it involves wondering a lot. I wonder what would happen if I wandered around Hong Kong with a camera on a stick. I wonder what would happen if I took a photo of the backyard and drew a fence on there. I wonder, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's wondering, it's curiosity, it's thinking about what if. That's where the seeds from this stuff come from. The third thing is that curiosity plus action equals creativity. That's where it comes from. It comes from both those first two things I talked about. The idea of it being a verb, of being action, and also that sense of wonder and curiosity. And if you can combine the curiosity with the action, that's where you get the creativity. That's where it comes from. You will produce creative things if you wonder about things and you act on that wonder. In order to do that, obviously you have to make time to play. I don't know how long I've spent doing these daily creates. Some days it's like 30 seconds, and other days it's like 6 hours, right? And that's okay. Obviously, you do whatever you want to do on it, but it takes some time to play. If you don't give yourself time to play and license to just mess around, you probably won't come up with creative things. You need to give yourself permission to wander off the path. You need to be able to start an idea and go, well, that didn't work, but hey, what if I take it a step further? And what if I take it a step further? You need to allow randomness to come into creativity. You need to allow yourself to come up with things that don't work and then do them anyway, okay? There's a sketch that I've done in one of these things I didn't show you, but like, it's a sketch, and I started sketching one thing, I went, oh, I've completely screwed that up, and I just went, oh, what if I turn it into this, right? It just, the impulse, and especially with kids, the impulse is to start something and go, that's no good, screw it up and throw it away. Don't do that. Start something, and if it doesn't work, turn it into something else. Really important to understand your ideas are not original. I haven't had a single original idea in everything I've done. Everything's been stolen, borrowed, influenced. Now, sometimes not consciously, like that blackout poem thing. I didn't know I was stealing that idea from Austin Kleon. All I knew is that I think I saw something like that once before, or something like that, or whatever. And it wasn't. I was actually quite surprised when I actually saw his book afterwards and realised I subconsciously it had been in there. But you steal nearly all of your ideas. We'd like to all think we're creative and we can just pull ideas out of nowhere. We can't. Every idea comes from something or somewhere, and the best ideas are the ones where we steal a little bit here, we steal a little bit there, we steal a little bit there, and we put them together in a way that is uniquely us. That's where creativity comes from. You know, Steve Jobs once famously quoted Picasso, who was actually quoting T.S. Eliot, saying, good artists copy and great artists steal. And what that was all about is saying, you know, the best form of stealing is when you steal in such a way that what you've actually created is so convoluted that it becomes up with something entirely new. There's nothing wrong with stealing ideas unless you just don't add anything to it, then it's plagiarism. So your ideas are not original. The corollary to your ideas not being original is that you should share. If you're taking ideas from other people, and you are, then it should be a, you know, you have to share that. Sharing is a, Gene Sharesky's phrase? Oh, it's gone out of my head, never mind. But you should definitely share your stuff. As human beings, that's how our culture is transmitted. We borrow ideas from all over the place, we put them together in our own unique ways, and other people want to take our ideas and put them together in their unique ways. That's how our culture is transmitted. If we don't do that, if we get real pedantic about our copyright, and you can't take my idea because that was my idea. No, it wasn't. It was somebody else's idea that you've interpreted. So let other people steal your ideas as well. Share freely. It's a moral imperative, that's the word I was thinking of. Okay. And finally, this idea of creativity, creating equals learning. You know, I've learned so much about myself, about creativity, about art, about design, about thinking, about technology, about what a palimpsest is, right? I've learned so much about so many things by forcing myself to make something every day that I can absolutely guarantee and tell you that learning equals creativity. If you're not creating, you're probably not learning. And part 3, to finish off. Becoming this idea of a creative conduit, you know, this idea of taking from others and sharing. So I've made some stuff in this little daily project I've challenged myself with. What can I take from that back to the classroom? Well, here's a couple of things I can share with you. Remember the shoe? Okay? Well, I took that into some kids and they all made shoes as well. So if you've got a good idea, share it. Get them to build something on it. So they love doing that activity. Remember the Photoshop face? I actually turned that officially into a computing applications task for my Year 11 kids. And they had to go and do that themselves, and they come up with some really interesting ideas. I really like this one in the middle where she's covered herself in grass, and she's got kind of flowers growing in her eyes and stuff. But now they come up with some really interesting ideas that I would never think of. And that's what I mean about stealing ideas. You know, they've based their work on something they saw elsewhere, but they've interpreted it in such a way that it's different. How are we for time? I thought you were chasing me off the stage. Maybe you are. This one here, my daughter's sitting on the toadstool. Well, you know, turn that into a task and sort of, you know, because in school we have to make everything official, right? Turn it into a task. But turn it into a task and get kids to do something. Make yourself into a mermaid. Set yourself on Easter Island taking a selfie. Interesting ideas. The poster that I showed you that my Year 4 kids are doing with the adjective and the picture, well, I'm doing that in my classroom, and that's nice, but I published that on the blog, and a teacher in New Zealand read the blog post and went, I like that idea, and he got his kids to do the same sort of thing. And they're making posters. If I wanted to learn about Indonesia, the amount of content we could learn is this big. The amount of time we have is this big. So no matter which way we cut it, I'm not going to teach them more than I teach them, yes? Right? So I don't care which bit they learn, as long as they're learning something, and as long as it's about the things that they need to know, I'm happy. So that's just an idea about how you might approach a task like that. As they were working on that task, I wandered around the room, I just videoed them as they were working on it. So she's designing in a 3D app, she's creating a Why I'm Cool It puppet in 3D. This girl's creating an iMovie about Indonesian dance. This girl's trying to compose some Indonesian music. This girl's making, using Comic Life to make a poster about Sumatran tigers. She's searching for photos for her cooking book. These girls are making a film and fluffing their lines. She's working on a cookbook in Book Creator, which she publishes to the iBooks library. This girl's using an app called Music. And these little objects, as they're bouncing around the screen there, as those little objects bounce around the screen, they hit each other, they make noises. Have you ever heard Indonesian music? It's like to the untrained ear, it sounds like a whole bunch of pots and pans clanging together, right? It's all gongs and bells and stuff. Well, the interesting thing is, this girl got these little things to clang against each other, so they made noises that sounded like bells and gongs. And then she made this. Just let it go on a bit. And she came up with this whole backstory. She was saying these were two sisters. And I don't know where this came from, right? She's presenting this in class. These are two sisters and they're fighting. And the mother comes along and tries to settle the argument. And she gets pushed out of the way. So the father comes and intervenes and tries to break up the argument and gets stuck in the middle. Okay, where's this come from? All she had to do was make a piece of music that sounded Indonesian. So she went to YouTube, listened to it, and then used this app to create something that she interpreted as Indonesian music. And it's got dynamic, it's got change, it's picking up on the basic idea of Indonesian music. And then she invents this whole backstory that goes with it and tells this myth about the two sisters. And I said, why did you do that whole myth story? We didn't ask you to do that. She said, you didn't tell me not to. And that's the thing about when you take the brakes off and allow creativity to flourish, you start to see kids doing things you didn't expect. So there you go. So I'll leave you with that thought that I think this idea of creativity should be a daily deliberate act. It should be something you do all the time. It should be the way you think. And I would challenge everyone in this room to set yourself a goal to do something creative. And whether that's to do something stupid like me and actually try and do a daily create every single day, or whether it's maybe you do something every week, or maybe you learn a new app every week, or maybe you do something that you've never done before once a month. Whatever it is, set yourself a challenge and a goal to try and do something new that you don't normally do, to learn things that you don't already know, to make things that don't already exist. And that's my challenge to you. So thanks very much, guys.